life. Difficult times and some pay the price, but others we find. Blessed are those who struggle. God loves you, and wisdom is the principal thing for kings and queens. It goes life. Difficult times and mad crimes. Some pay the price, but others we find. Blessed are those who struggle. God loves you, and wisdom is the principal thing for kings and queens. Maybe I'll.
All right, family, what's good? What's good? What's good this morning, family? It's your man, Jay Shoulders. I Manifest Radio, Support District Radio, My Radio Phoenix. What's going on, family? And yes, as I always say, I do consider you family. So, what's going on today, y'all? It's a beautiful day. We're in the city of Phoenix on July 6th, 2019. A lot happening this week. But notably this week, of course, the 4th of July, I like to just get right into it. And today we're doing something a little different, you know what I'm saying? I'm just going straight live from my phone, you know what I'm saying? I'm just making it happen. So what I want to talk about, family, real quick, or not real quick, what I want to kind of go into is a few things, man. And, if you know anything about me, you know how much of a student of history that I am, and that I like to, talk about things that have happened in the past and how they relate to what's going on in the future, or as they relate to what's happening now in our society, man. And I came across a few things over the last few weeks because I'm an eternal student. You know what I'm saying? I'm always reading, I'm always studying, I'm always searching to understand something, and notably myself first, you know what I'm saying? And and in my search, I come across, a speech being narrated by James Earl Jones. He actually he does this a lot. And he was narrating a speech by Frederick Douglass. Okay. And also, he narrated a couple of speeches by Frederick Douglass. This one in particular is in relations to 4th of July. What's up, Joe? I see you. This is related to the 4th of July, all right? And I know that's kind of a thorny, sticky subject with a lot of people, you know what I mean? And, I'm one who, for a while was doing the barbecues and, the flag thing and whatnot. And, that's well and good if that's your thing. But I like to look at things in a historical context because I'm not just an American, you know what I'm saying? I'm a black American. I have to look at myself that way, you know what I'm saying? I have to look at myself through the lens of the world as a black man. I don't have the autonomy as of yet in this country to look at myself as just an American. I mean, you can say that, but saying it and it actually being respected is a totally different thing. So it was a particular speech, and I wish I could find it now. I can't seem to find it right now, but I'll look for it, that James Earl Jones read from Frederick Douglass. I think it was more so a narration of the story of the life of Frederick Douglass. I think that's what it was. It was his life. And, it kind of, this man went from slavery. Of course, everyone knows that. He was born a slave. He didn't even know quite when. He didn't even quite know his age, you know what I mean? Which in that narration of his story exposed the fact that a lot of the slaves didn't even know. Not only were they kept ignorant of their names, their culture, they was kept ignorant of their birth dates. They didn't even know where they were born. It was just kind of an assumption based off of how everyone else kind of looked at that time. You know what I'm saying? 28, 29, maybe, or 5, or the slave master knew, but the slaves didn't know. They didn't know how to read. None of that stuff, man. So for a long time, that was Frederick Douglass's life, man. And then when you check out the story of this man, you'll see how he evolved. And then that kind of struck a chord in me because it's always, if you look throughout Black history, there was always a time where there was someone out of the Black community who was sparked by something inside of them that said, no, it is something greater here. There's something that we can do that's better. We can figure this out. We can't continue to be assaulted on a daily basis. We can't continue to have our minds, our bodies, our souls assaulted on a daily basis like this for decades and decades and decades, and there is no remedy. There is no protection. You know, as Malcolm X used to say, the government was either unable or unwilling to protect their citizens. And that's where the citizen question comes up for us, because if we were truly considered citizens, we wouldn't need a Voting Rights Act. Yo, what's up, bro? How you doing, man? Man, Jay Ward, yo, that's my boy growing up. So we wouldn't even have needed a Voting Rights Act if we were still considered citizens. And even further, the Voting Rights Act needs to be renewed every 25 years. They mean they need to vote on it every 25 years. If we were truly considered citizens of the United States of America, why would we even need a Voting Rights Act? Think about it. What's the point? Do white people need a Voting Rights Act? Does any other race or nationality of person in this country need a Voting Rights Act? But we do. We did. And we do. Why is no one talking about, hey, you know what? We need to take that off the books. We citizens. Why we even need permission every 25 years for the right to vote? I thought that's what our ancestors died for, was the right to vote. And people get that wrong. Our ancestors did not die solely for us to have the right to vote, those who were fighting for that. It was about freedom, freedom, freedom. The chance and the ability to go ahead and vote, to exercise that right should you choose to. The whole point is to have the ability to choose to, like everyone else. That was the whole point of the 13th Amendment. I suggest y'all pick up a book and start reading. Read the 13th Amendment, the 14th Amendment, the 15th Amendment, okay? The 13th Amendment so-called freed us, where the vestiges of chattel slavery will be broken from the shoulders of the black man, of the Negro, of the ex-slave. Well, now he shall enjoy all the benefits and everything of white people. Okay, the 14th Amendment, I believe, gave us the right to grant us our citizenship. Okay, now we're citizens. The 15th Amendment granted black men the right to vote. Okay, so the 13th and the 14th Amendment, 15th Amendment were a point where we're supposed to be put into a protected class, like the Native Americans. So going forward, we can start enjoying the full rights, the full benefits, the full everything of citizenship and what it is to be American. Okay? We were supposed to get that. That's where in the 13th Amendment, that's where the 40 acres and a mule came from. We were supposed to get $150, a mule, some tools, and 40 acres of land. That was a great, and this is for every freed slave. So this was supposed to be the beginning building blocks of an economic base for the slaves to be able to take care of themselves. Okay? So this was supposed to be the beginning of that. This was supposed to be the time where we were to get that going. Okay? But it didn't happen. So I just one of my things is, and I'm going to go into this speech about with Frederick Douglass and James Earl Jones reciting the speech. I just wanted to kind of preface that and just as a way of saying, hey, let's just start paying attention, man. Let's just stop being lemmings and just following people, because that's what people do. Everybody's doing it. Okay, we look like the Simpsons out here. You know, Springfield, either Illinois, Massachusetts, wherever's Missouri, wherever there's a Springfield, that's where we are. The doleful following sheep. And that's how our politicians treat us. That's how the president treats us. Like sheep, lemming. You know, and we're not the only ones as black people that are following like Frankenstein. Everybody's doing it. except those in power. Those in power know how to cloak what they're doing. Okay? And this is what we have to start paying attention to. We have to start paying attention to that. Okay? We can't stay asleep forever. All right, so I'm going to play this speech, y'all. I'm going to play this speech. Bring my phone a little closer here. Hopefully y'all can hear. I'm going to do my best here. You know how we do it. You know what I'm saying? I'm from the Bronx, baby. We get it done. So check this out. It's from this show called Democracy Now! I used to listen to Democracy Now! When I lived in Los Angeles, and hosted by Amy Goodman and I think Juan Gonzalez for years and years and years. And you're talking the mid-90s. I was listening to this show, and now they're like everyone else. They got on YouTube. They're doing their thing now. So now all their radio stuff is visual, and I'm sure they're still doing their radio stuff. So these are like progressive Democrats. Take that with a grain of salt, you know, what the Democrats did to us too. So, but, you know, every now and then, you know, you can't reject knowledge, you can't reject information, and every now and then they provide good information. So I came across this video, and I thought, in light of, in essence of the 4th of July, I'm not one to celebrate. I ain't celebrate the 4th of July in over 20 years. What's the point? Why? So listen to my why. Listen to it. Here we go.
He was asked to speak in celebration of the 4th of July.
Frederick Douglass was.
Fellow citizens, pardon me, and allow me to ask, why am I called upon to speak here today? What have I, or those I represent, to do with your national independence?
And this is only about 5 minutes, y'all, so don't trip out.
Principles of political freedom and of natural justice embodied in that Declaration of Independence extended to us, and am I therefore called upon to bring our humble offering to the national altar and to confess the benefits and express devout gratitude for the blessings resulting from your independence to us. I am not included within the pale of this glorious anniversary. Your high independence only reveals the immeasurable distance between us. The blessings in which you this day rejoice are not enjoyed in common. The rich inheritance of justice, liberty, prosperity, and independence bequeathed by your fathers is shared by you, not by me. The sunlight that brought life and healing to you has brought stripes and death to me. This 4th of July is yours, not mine. You may rejoice, I must mourn. To drag a man in fetters into the grand illuminated temple of liberty and call upon him to join you in joyous anthems were inhuman mockery and sacrilegious irony. Do you mean, citizens, to mock me by asking me to speak today? What, to the American slave, is your 4th of July? I answer, a day that reveals to him more than all other days of the year the gross injustice and cruelty to which he is a constant victim. To him, your celebration is a sham. Your boasted liberty, an unholy license. Your national greatness, swelling vanity. Your sounds of rejoicing are empty and heartless. Your denunciation of tyrants, brass-fronted impudence. Your shouts of liberty and equality, hollow mockery. Your prayers and hymns, your sermons and thanksgivings, with all your religious parade and solemnity, are to him mere bombast, fraud, deception, impiety, and hypocrisy. A thin veil to cover up crimes that would disgrace a nation of savages. There's not a nation of the earth guilty of practices more shocking and bloody than are the people of these United States at this very hour. At a time like this, scorching irony, not convincing argument, is needed. Oh, had I the ability and could reach the nation's ear, I would today pour forth a fiery stream of biting ridicule, blasting reproach, withering sarcasm, and stern rebuke. For it is not light that is needed, but fire. It is not the gentle shower, but thunder. We need the storm, the whirlwind, the earthquake. The feeling of the nation must be quickened. The conscience of the nation must be roused. The propriety of the nation must be startled. The hypocrisy of the nation must be exposed, and the crimes against God and man must be proclaimed and denounced.
That was James.
Boom. The hypocrisy. And you're talking a man that was speaking during the time that slavery was still going on. He's delivered that speech in 1852. In 1852, slavery didn't so-called end until 1863, and then again in June 19th of 1865. So-called. Okay? So he delivered this speech at a time where we were still in chattel slavery. Okay? He lived in D.C. for a while. Okay, he was a slave in D.C. for a while. So there was free blacks in D.C. and there were slaves in D.C. Washington, D.C., that is. Okay, slavery in the North was just as big as it was in the South. Don't let them fool you. One of the biggest slave plantations was on Long Island. I think either on the border of Brooklyn and Long Island. One of the largest slave plantations in the nation. Okay, so let's not get it twisted. All right, so the North was just as complicit. And you know, I'm digging into my teaching bag. But, you know, we're starting to, you know, we'll get into a little history of New York City, the city I grew up in, and what I've been learning and uncovering just, you know, myself, you know, about how much slavery actually impacted, you know what I'm saying, the growth of Wall Street, you know what I mean? And there's, you know, how Central Park was known as Seneca Village, you know what I'm saying? That's where, you know, slaves were, and the Native Americans, you know, ex-slaves lived there, free blacks lived there. You know what I'm saying? And they were pushed off the land and Central Park was created. Okay, and growing up, I didn't know that. I didn't know that at all. You know what I'm saying? And that's not something that was taught in the public schools there. So we hear about his speech, man, how Frederick Douglass was just calling out the hypocrisy of the 4th of July for black people to engage. Like, it's, what is it to us? We slaves. In 1776, that was your liberation from England, from the British Crown. Old Patrick Henry said, give me liberty or give me death. Isn't that what he said? But aren't we saying the same thing? I'm seeing all these, I live out here in Arizona, man. I'm seeing all these license plates talking about don't tread on me. Really? Really? Don't tread on me. My people was in shackles at this time, and you talking about don't tread on me. No taxation was out without representation. Come on, let's get it together, y'all. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not telling people what to do. I'm not judging anybody. If you believe, you honestly believe that as an American, you want to celebrate the 4th of July, do your thing. Frederick Douglass didn't condemn anybody in that speech for engaging. He just said, what does it mean to me? It doesn't hold the same meaning for me because while you were celebrating your liberation, you have me in captivity. That creates a conflict of interest right there because everyone else around the world is like, okay, you are talking about freedom and this, that, and the third, but you holding 1 million people in shackles and chains. I mean, what's going on? What's the disconnect? What's the disconnect? There's a lot of disconnect. And I kind of see Frederick Douglass, man, as kind of that, and it was probably someone before him that tried and got lynched or hung or killed. he was one of those. He came about at a time where, spiritually and just kind of in the air, slavery was on its way out. Slavery was on its way out because this was pre-Civil War. So, the Civil War didn't crack off to about 1861. So, you're talking, 8 years pre-Civil War. So something was in the air already. What a lot of history books don't teach you, and I always encourage my people to pick up a book, please. You know what I'm saying? And stop looking at studying your history as something that's taboo or something that you shouldn't do. Think about why you would even be discouraged from wanting to pick up a book to learn about yourself. Why would you even feel that way? Why would you even feel that way? That you wouldn't want to learn about yourself? You got to think about that. Think about the school systems that we were raised in. We were not encouraged to study our people, our black people, and the things that we've done here, what we've been through, what we've done in truth and in thorough study, not a paragraph, not maybe a chapter, but books, volumes, because we get that of the European version. Okay? So we need to study. So if it's not in the history books at school, if it's not there, don't rely on that. There's plenty of bookstores and libraries out there you can learn from. There's a lot of people out here teaching this knowledge now on YouTube and whatnot you can learn from. We in that day and age now where knowledge and wisdom will be the stability of our times, because we have to know what the hell is going on. Because this type of existence here cannot persist, man. We cannot continue to deal with black bodies lining the streets of the cities of this country. We can't continue to deal with black bodies in cages, our children being killed and burned, some by our own brothers, man. I don't even, it's even beyond what white people doing. I don't care about that at this point. I mean, I care, but that's not where I'm focused. I'm more concerned about our people and what we need to do to straighten up. They gonna do what they gonna do. They doing what they supposed to do, which is wreak havoc. Then they doing it. And I encourage a lot of you people who call yourselves Christians to really read the Bible and really understand. The Bible tell you that this man is that law and justice shall be his strength. How does he exercise his authority over us? The law. Law and criminal justice, which is an oxymoron out of this world. And no one thinks to question that. Criminal justice. It's amazing that a criminal is talking about criminal justice. Amazing. Well, anyway, you know what I'm saying? It just baffles the mind. So as I continue to study and as I continue to look at what's going on, I'm seeing a pattern. I'm seeing a pattern in history. I'm seeing a pattern from that time. But there was something in the air. There was something going on. Black people were starting to just flee the plantations all over the country and going out west, going up to Canada, going down south into Florida, down into Mexico, down in the Caribbean, up north into Canada, Nova Scotia, Chicago, Detroit, going out west. And what people don't tell you was that we was kind of just emancipating ourselves, and we kind of instigated the situation. It wasn't like they decided to sit down and break bread and said, okay, how are we going to delegate, the lives of black people at this time? They didn't do that. We had to instigate all of this in order for something to happen. So it took that instigation, what they call agitation, in order for something to happen. What happened when the boiling point got too much? We had a civil war. Why? Because the North was trying to tell the South what to do. The South wasn't having it because the South was making more money than the North, and the North wanted some of that bread. So there was that conflict, and slavery, those slaves were the discussion. Don't let them fool you and say it was states' rights. If you notice, they've been saying that since 1852. States' rights. It ain't about states' rights. It's about slavery. It was about control of the black body. We were brought over here to be commodity. When we decided to be men, that's when things started shifting. That's when things started shifting. That's when things started changing. Civil War. Okay? Emancipation Proclamation. A lot of us were freeing ourselves anyway. When you read the life of Frederick Douglass, he'll tell you that. A lot of us were buying our freedom, buying land, running off of the plantations, left and right. So that's where the paddy wagon, the paddy rollers, and all of that started coming from, because these black people were leaving. They were getting out of there, man, and they had to control that. And then come the Reconstruction period, which I've been talking about for the last month or so, where now we started getting gains and started getting up into politics and the business and the industry, just like today. Okay, becoming people of power and influence on a somewhat scale that started building. Repeated history. You know what I'm saying? That was going on from right after Reconstruction ended, or during the Civil War, really. It was black people building wealth, building communities, and building places during the Civil War in certain parts of the country. So this speech comes at a time where, everybody's celebrating emancipation from the British Crown, but a man comes along and says, an ex-slave comes along and says, well, what does that got to do with us? What does that have to do with us? I mean, you can do what you want to, no judgment, because I'm not here to judge. I'm here to say, what does that have to do with us? I don't feel an affinity. What is frying a burger going to do for me? What is, eating some, in a picnic, and if you knew what a picnic was, you wouldn't even have your butt out there, or call it something else, a cookout. Okay? You want to see what a picnic is? Pick up a book. Portraits of Lynchings, I believe that's what it's called. And you'll see the picnics. So I don't see why we doing that, why we're engaging in that, activity. It's fun. It's a day off. It's a day to chill. But when you look at it historically, and this is a man who was living in it, steeped in it. I'm at least 4 generations removed from it. Most of us are, 2 to 4 generations removed from chattel slavery. Okay, this was a man still steeped in it. It was still in major full activity, because it still didn't come to an end for another 10 to 12 years when he gave this speech. He said, what to the slave is the 4th of July? Your emancipation is not my emancipation. You get to celebrate and do this, but I'm still catching the whip and the lash, and I still got to bale that cotton, get that cotton, that bale of cotton together. That's what you call it, a bale of cotton together. And a bale is somewhere around 80 pounds, okay, maybe 100 of pure cotton, okay. So get that going while we over here celebrating emancipation. But the slaves weren't free. So what does the 4th of July really mean to me? One word: tradition. That's what people do. It's what people do. It's tradition. Okay? But just because it's what people do doesn't mean you should actually do it. Or doesn't mean you have to do it. We have family members, we have friends, we have co-workers that try to coerce us into, or guilt us into, you must be anti-American, you must be, no, I'm not anti-anything. I'm just anti-crap. You know what I'm saying? Like this, if it doesn't resonate with me as a black man, and yes, I have to view the world through that lens, because that's how the world sees me. So not only am I conscious of how the world sees me, I see myself through the world because I'm conscious of myself, but I also understand how the world views me. I get it. And I teach it to my sons and my daughters. Not rocket science. And it ain't even and even though he made the speech about what does that got to do with us? It wasn't an indictment. It was more of a expose. It's an expose, of what's going on. You know what I'm saying? Why are you trying to force this on me when, you invited me here to speak, but what does this have to do with me? I'm not rejoicing. For what? At any minute, somebody can kick in this door and beat my butt. And they've done that to him several times when you read the story of his life. When he really first started giving speeches, they used to roll on him. And he would be with a group of white people who were sympathetic and who were helping out, you know what I'm saying? So this is not an indictment against white people. It was a lot that was down, that was like rolling with Frederick Douglass. They believed in him and were helping him. But they could only go so far too. You know what I'm saying? They was getting beat up with him too. Once again, history repeats itself because this was happening for the fight for civil rights. This was happening during the turn of the 20th century. We've always had allies, but they've been few in number. Frederick Douglass had allies. But during the early parts of his life, when he started giving speeches, when he became, eloquent, as he was growing into his eloquence, he used to catch a beat down giving speeches. He got his hand permanently, not disfigured, but injured because he got it broken during a fight, during, getting stomped out. You know what I'm saying? So in the story of his life, he talked about how he, from that point on, he never had like good use of his right hand again. How many people knew that? How many people knew he got the stuffing beat out of him more than one time just trying to deliver a speech like that? He was up north when he delivered that speech, but that didn't save him from getting beat up. But it also didn't stop him from speaking the truth. It was something inside of him that said, I have to do this. And that's the point I'm making for this first segment, family, is that little call in us, that voice that's inside of us, man, we need to listen to that. That's God speaking to us, man. That's the universe. That's the Most High. That's how I refer to him. That's how I refer to that higher being that speaks to me in the deep recesses of my conscience and tells me what to do. Get up out of bed and do this. Write this. Talk about this. Don't go here, go there. God speaks to us. Sometimes we listen, sometimes we don't. And I'm not saying that I'm perfect. I don't always listen. Sometimes what I want to, and then you always end up in trouble and wonder why. Because it's hard to be consistent. It's hard to stay on that path, but we have to do that. We have to start listening to that. And that's what he did. But if you notice throughout history, within the last 150 to 200 years, there have always been black men who've heard that call. Because think about it, and I'm gonna take a break right after I make this point. Think about it. During the time of Frederick Douglass, there was also Booker T. Washington. Okay, so you had this juggling of ideas. Also, a lot of scholarship was coming out right around the end of the 19th century, beginning of the 20th century, with W.E.B. Du Bois and all of these scholars that were starting to come out. But right around that time, because of the oppression that was continuing, Marcus Garvey, 1919, 1920, 1921, 1914, right around the time of World War I, we had the rise of Marcus Garvey. During that time, Elijah Muhammad was born, and 20, 30 years later, we had the rise of Islam in the 30s and 40s as a response to the constant repression of our people. But we also had the rise of the black middle class and Christianity during that time. But we also had those people who heard the call. Marcus Garvey heard the call. Martin Luther King, for whatever varying opinions people may have of him, heard the call because he was a reluctant leader, pastor, but eventually he heard the call. Malcolm X heard the call. Huey Newton heard the call. Because of the continuing repression of the 40s and 50s. We have the Black Power movement of the 60s and 70s. But this is just a continuum. We're on a continuum of time. We're repeating the same things over and over. We respond to the repression, the oppressor responds to us. We respond to the oppression and repression, the oppressor responds to us. They don't consider themselves or call themselves oppressors, but when you got laws, when you got statutes, when you got commandments, when you got education, when you got control of the media, religion, when you got control of war, sex, all of that stuff, all the 9 activities of human activity on the planet is controlled by one person, by one mind, one mentality, one ideology. What room does it leave for you to be autonomous? How do you free yourself from that? How do we free ourselves from the continuum of this cycle that we're continuing to go through? How do we free ourselves from that continuum? Because that's what it is. It's a response. We are responding to the repression and oppression, the political, economic repression and deprivation that we are experiencing in this country. We are responding, and the response and that response genders a bigger response, which is usually to stomp it out. And it breaks up. Black people become scattered and confused again. Then we go through another period of time of rebuilding, getting ourselves together again, getting our conscience back. We're starting to heal again, because Lord knows they don't send any people to come in and heal us and talk to us to get our minds and spirits and bodies after experiencing and seeing and going through trauma every single day of violence, of watching our people being shot down by the police, watching our men and our boys being hung and lynched, thrown in prisons. That trauma and the response to that trauma throughout that time frame started to come in an academic form throughout the 20th century. Brothers and sisters, we couldn't pick up guns and stuff and respond in like manner. We had to figure out how not only to cope, but how to figure out how to overcome it in a sense where we defeat it in a way that still keeps us alive. Get it? But we understood too that, hey, a lot of us are gonna die. So you had the Marcus Garvey movement, the rise of Marcus Garvey, and the Black Star Line, and instilling black pride in black people, and saying, hey, we are this, we are that. Because remember, when he came about, we're talking about the race riots. They call them riots, but they were actually massacres that were going on during the turn of the 20th century, y'all. In response to that, we get Marcus Garvey. Because remember, Booker T. Washington and W.E.B. Du Bois, Frederick Douglass, they passed away, right before the 20th century. They passed away right around that time, so those voices were gone, and now it was time for some new voices, a new generation, and that's what came about. But Marcus Garvey died in disgrace because what? He was too much power. It's too much power for a black man. Too much. His movement was smashed. In response to that, you get a rise of the black middle class. Hey, we'll start giving you black people something. So in the 20s, 30s, and 40s, hey, even after the Great Depression, black people was doing pretty good. And you guys now we have a black middle class, where Martin Luther King and people like him, and all these people from the 60s that were educated, that went to college, that was doctors and lawyers and judges, well, not judges, but doctors and lawyers and professionals were, came about. We're going to church and things like that. These people were driving nice cars, had great jobs, you know what I'm saying, and lived in, communities, black communities, but they were well-kept black communities. They were good black communities, okay? This is where they came from. Went to well-manicured lawns, went to school. The boys went to school with, ties on, and, and the girls went to school with dresses, and everybody was, polite. And, that's how it was. And everybody knew their place and did what they were supposed to do. That's how you keep peace and harmony, but you had that rise. But out of that movement, we still experienced repression. 1955, bus boycott, hit them in the pockets. We get the chance to ride on the bus. What happens after that? The fall of black economics, black communities, black all that stuff. Integration come in is the response. Break all that stuff up. Out of that comes the rise of the Black Panthers, the Black Power movement, Malcolm X. Then it started reverberating around the planet, and now the continent is going through it, where people who are now hearing the call, Patrice Lumumba, and there were other names, but they escape me right now. I should have wrote them down. But who heard the call, but who were shot down by the French, by the British, by the Dutch, by the Portuguese, who were ruling and controlling Africa. Is also around the time on the continent where our people heard the call, and decided that they weren't going to have it anymore and fought for their liberation, where now these countries in the 50s and 60s were now gaining independence from their former colonizers. What's the penalty for that? Poverty. Impoverish the people. You don't want us here, we're going to take all the resources, we're going to take everything. Poverty. Wake up, people. This your man, Jay Shoulders. I Manifest Radio. Support District Radio, my Radio Phoenix. I'll be back in a moment.